We are less than cattle to these beings, chattel to be cast aside, consumed or made sport with for their pleasure. There is not one among them that would pay heed to a world of man, as I would to an ant on my boot.
Throughout the Milky Way galaxy, untold millions of worlds teem with life. Coalescing into tribes, civilizations, and empires, the cycle of endless war is propagated by insects of the void. Eldar, orcs, Tau, humans, all waging wars of insignificant annihilation as they strive to endure the dying of the light. Yet there is only one species capable of ruling the galaxy, the god-slaying, eternal vestiges of living metal, the subjects of the infinite empire, the Necrons. Unlike the verminous lesser species, the Necrons' origins date back to a once virgin galaxy. Known then as the Necrontyr, my people pioneered the greatest technological marvels and innovations ever to be discovered by mortal beings. Yet we were gifted only misfortune, for prior to our ascension into necrodermic bodies, we reaped only the most unjust suffering imaginable. The cradle of our birth world capable of producing life, despite our evolution into intelligent beings with no aid nor intervention, a curse of fate befell my people. Our planet of Genesis within dangerously close proximity to our system's star, the malevolent celestial body barraged our planet with immense levels of radiation and solar storms. Cancers and growths were endemic throughout my people, for none among us would exceed the age of 40 cycles. As a mortal, I still remember the routine of checking my skin each morning for tumors, yet the wheels of progress continued to turn in order to find a means to escape our terminal fate. Advances in technology enabled us to manipulate time, matter, and even causality to an extent, yet nothing short of the exodus of our planet could hope to bring us salvation. Constructing vessels capable of space travel, to our shock, we found that no matter the distance we traveled from our accursed sun, its curse had been seared into our genetic structure. No matter how far we ran from the clutches of our homeworld, the neoplasia afflicting us never relented, and for a time, my people resigned ourselves to be destined to accept our frailty. Yet within the bleakest moment of our existence, the Necrontyr would be offered a glimmer of hope. With the birth of the galaxy, its elements were scattered across the void. The first sentient beings of the galaxy, the Old Ones, developed from the matter of the universe and began to develop their own civilization and technologies. Unlike our own species, the Old Ones were innately masterful in controlling the powers of the Immaterium, allowing for their privileged existence to further burgeon. Seemingly immortal beings, reaping the harvest of unearned powers, their empire and custodianship of lesser species spread with incredible haste until their discovery of the Necrontyr. The powers of what you would call the Warp are anathema to my people, for we have no aptitude in harnessing such powers. Yet within the purview of the Old Ones, they help the influence to heal my species from our affliction. Yet despite their affinity for psychic engineering, the Old Ones deemed us unworthy of their aid. What right was theirs? These immortal beings burdened with no great struggle, no painful sores and deadly growth stricken to their flesh. I'd spit on their memory, were I able to form saliva from my necrodermis. So mighty were they, so pleasingly brilliant, yet nothing they had done was earned, nothing gained through struggle nor toil. All they had built inherited from an unjust galaxy, and in their hubris saw my people as little more than beleaguered ants, desperate for a chance at life without pain. While we built sarcophaguses for our premature dead, they tended to fertile garden worlds and busied themselves with adopting lesser species, incapable of evolving without their meddling hands. Every waking moment of our lives, my people anticipated their slow and painful demise, knowing that even from their birth they would be fated to perish. With the rejection of the Old Ones, to aid in our plight, the dynasties of the Necrontyr began to secede from the Empire, and the rule of the Triarchs, led by the Silent King, Sarek. The wars of secession wrought death and destruction among my people. Yet despite the conflict, our empire continued to grow. Realizing that our species would dwindle without a common enemy to unite us, the Silent King enacted a war to combat the Old Ones for the slight made against our people. Yet alone we could not hope to face such powerful beings, and in our time of need, another benefactor presented itself. Though once again united, the Necrontyr's war against the Old Ones proved costly from the start. Outmaneuvered by the pawns of the Old Ones, such as the Eldari, due to their use of warp gates and their webway system, the Necrontyr Empire withdrew to the Halo Stars. Again, our people fractured. The wars of secession began anew, and all hope seemed to be lost for my people to triumph against our nemesis. Yet unbeknownst to my people, a war had erupted against the Old Ones prior to our discovery. Beings composed of the remnants of the most ancient of stars, the electrodynamic corporeal beings known to my people as the C'tan, offered us a means to destroy our foes. Beings of pure energy, the Star Gods had failed in their war against the Old Ones by virtue of not being capable to harness their powers through a material form. Offering the Necrontyr a bargain, the C'tan promised to deliver us from our plight in exchange for a means to transform their essence into necrodermic shells. Clad into the forms of the ancient half-forgotten legends of the Necrontyr's past deities, the C'tan gained increased strength and self-awareness. My people in exchange were offered a poison chalice, to which we drank deep. Entering vast biofurnaces to transform our frail flesh into living metal forms, the entirety of the Necrontyr species accepted biotransference, or died just shy of the gateways to their ascension. Only the rulers of the Necrontyr of old retained their cognition, for the lesser subjects of our empire emerged from the biofurnaces as little more than automaton husks. The Star Gods ate hungrily at the life energy of the now enslaved thralls of the Necron species. True to their wager, the C'tan with the Necron armies at their side did annihilate the Old Ones and their puppets, yet with the Star Gods' transformation, an insatiable hunger had grown. Not content with the genocide of the Old Ones, the C'tan began to fight among themselves for power as their obedient indentured servants witnessed their terrible malevolence. Yet the Silent King would not allow for his people to be slaves eternal, and as the Star Gods waged their civil war, Sarek enacted his reprisal. Shattering the C'tan with vast hypercannons and containing their essence inside tesseract vaults and labyrinths, the Necrons had finally bested each and every one of their foes. Though with time, the Eldari species could pose a threat to the Necrons' dominion, and so it was ordained that the Necrons must shelter for millennia as the Great Sleep enabled the preservation of the now infinite empire. Constructing vast tomb worlds to harbor our slumbering species, the Necron Empire waited for the inevitable fall of the Eldar and any species to follow in their wake. For 60 million years, the Infinite Empire slept, yet we could never foretell the myriad events that plunged the galaxy ever further into chaos, degeneracy, and ruin. Awakening to find the void beset on all sides by lesser species, billions of Necrons still slumber as the galaxy rends itself apart, root and stem. For the reclamation of the stars shall be the greatest undertaking my people shall ever endure. For with the return of the Silent King, and numerous dynasties each led by their respective overlords, our wrath shall be felt once more. The dynasties of the Infinite Empire are so numerous that even those active within the Era Indomitus encompass only a fraction of our combined might. Each led by a Pharaon of the royal dynasty, the masters of such great kingdoms of the Necrontyr's bloodlines commands several planetary systems, each containing clusters of tomb worlds. Ruling over their crown world, each Pharaon of the Infinite Empire calls to their core worlds and fringe worlds to support their seat of power as they conduct independent campaigns to reclaim the stars. Following strict hierarchies, entrenched from the days of the Wars of Secession, most titles of lesser nobility, such as Weimarks or Fatars, are hereditary in nature. Served by their royal court, the Pharaons implement their influence through their assistants, typically comprised of overlords, Necron lords, and cryptex. Each royal court varying in size, dependent on the scale of each dynasty. Even lesser fiefdoms, who do not possess a royal court, are assigned a cadre of immortals, deathmarks and lich guards, alike to their more powerful contemporaries. Displaying their nobility using ancient glyphs, such designs have remained unchanged for millennia. The most precious of all glyphs, the Ankh of the Triarch, symbolizes the Triarch Council and is used by every Necron dynasty to symbolize their pledge to the unified Infinite Empire. Typically bearing their own dynastic glyph upon their death mask, cloak or weaponry, it is the height of arrogance to replace the Ankh of the Triarch upon one's breastplate as a flagrant defiance of tradition, allowing for lesser ranks to use only a fragment of their dynastic glyph. Its full design is reserved only for the nobility. A rare few nobles bear no glyph at all, though this is typically a sign of their dynasty's fall during the War in Heaven, or the stripping of their rank, and as such these individuals are treated with suspicion. Marking their designs upon monoliths and doomsday arcs, the symbols of the dynasties herald their impending wrath to those unfortunate enough to gaze upon their majesty. The mighty Sarkhan dynasty is ruled by the Silent King, Sarek. The most preeminent of all the dynasties of the Necron tier of old, the void left in their presence has been felt by every fiefdom of the Necrons since their awakening, allowing for power struggles and usurpers to thrive. Its supremacy waning with the loss of many of its tomb worlds and the disappearance of their Silent King, the Sarkhan dynasty has diminished considerably due to their dormancy, allowing for their continual unopposed routing. Adhering to their prophecy that one day the Silent King would return and lead them to salvation, their faith in the Triarch would be rewarded during the 41st millennium. Many lesser dynasties eagerly swore fealty to Sarek with his return, yet others bitterly refused to aid their long-absent monarch. Currently situated within the Segmentum Tempestus of the Galactic South and core of the Ultima Segmentum, the Sarkhan dynasty concealed the true extent of their influence and confluence events leading to their awakening. The Sautek dynasty is the largest and most expansionist of all the dynasties, led by their Pharaon, Imhotep the Stormlord. Comprised of over 80 tomb worlds, their seat of power, Mandragora, holds dominion of the eastern fringe of galactic space and lords over hundreds of conquered alien worlds. Upon the revival of their dynasty, the lords of Sautek squabbled for supremacy of their fiefdom with the loss of their Pharaon, and in awakening the Stormlord from his slumber, the coup to usurp the throne would be sundered. Enshrining their terrible and brilliant Nemesor as their new Pharaon, the Stormlord now commands his dynasty to reclaim the stars in an effort to unite his people and utterly destroy the lesser species. Crushing any dynasty unwilling to be subsumed into the Sautek dynasty, client dynasties of Arinmarok, Horth, and Sekemtar work diligently under the banner of their new ruler. The Nihilak dynasty is led by Pharaon Krispek upon the world of Geden. Once revered for their construction of their treasure worlds, filled with pillages spoiled from untold hundreds of annihilated species, the Nihilak is the most well-armed and resource-rich of all the dynasties. Pride and arrogance being their defining qualities, it is no wonder that the great kleptomaniac curator, Trazyn the Infinite, is of the ilk of Nihilak. Allying with the Silent King with his resurgence across the stars, the isolationist dynasty destroy any unwelcome interlopers of their territories, using their nigh undepleted armies. Predicting their opponent's actions, using the severed head of an ancient alien prophet, the Nihilok focused their efforts on hunting down Chaos factions and aiding the campaign of the Pariah Nexus. The Maynarch dynasty are among the most sinister in nature of all the kingdoms of the Infinite Empire due to their actions of the War in Heaven. Infamous for their savagery and malice, the Silent King deliberately harnessed their aggressive tendencies prior to biotransference in order to better transform them into deliberate and ruthless machines of war. Instrumental in the revolt against the Catan, the Maynarch dynasty are responsible for the death of the being known as Landragor, the Flayer, yet for their efforts damned the Necrons to the curse of the Flayer virus. The first to fall to the hunger of the flesh, several dynasties petitioned the Silent King to destroy the Maynarch dynasty to prevent the curse from spreading. Unwilling to further fracture and divide his people, Sarek refused to destroy the Maynarch, and with their reawakening from the Great Sleep, many surrendered to their hunger. The majority of their forces, now comprised of flayed ones, the terrible kingdom of Pharaon Zun-Bakir, embraces their nihilism and embarks upon the void, knowing their fate is sealed. The Mefrit dynasty specialize in destruction on a planetary scale and harness the power to turn stars into supernovas. Allied with the Silent King during the War in Heaven, the Mefrit utilizes weapons harnessing the power of captive suns to destroy the enemies of the Infinite Empire. Their Pharaon, Kyrek the Eternal, lost during the Great Sleep, Overlord Zarathustra the Ineffable vies for the power of his dynasty to obliterate entire star systems. The Nefrek dynasty is among the most wealthy of all fiefdoms of the Infinite Empire, located within proximity of the galactic core of the Ultima Segmentum. Focusing their efforts on transferring their consciousness into bodies of pure light, their kingdom has subjugated millions of Imperial citizens for use as experiments. Embroiled in a war against the Chaos Space Marine warband of the Thousand Suns, the Cult of Time, the Sons of Magnus attempt to discover the secrets of the dynasty's means of enslaving and harnessing the powers of the Catan. Amassing several doomsday weapons which harness the powers of the celestial bodies of their kingdom, the overlords of the dynasty have become renowned for their ability to temporarily transform into beings of pure light. So powerful are they in their golden forms, they can command the metagold within their thrall armies to shift across battlefields at great speed and pass through solid matter. Last of the most reputed dynasties are Novok, the bloodied hand of the Necron war machine. Daubing their arms and faces in the blood of their enemies prior to their transformation into necrodermic forms, the butchers of Novok do not relent until their foes are utterly slaughtered. Descending into frenzies once the first blood of their enemies is drawn, these frenetic warriors deploy vast amounts of Lich Guards and Destroyers. Situated within the Ultima Segmentum, within their crown world of Dol 6, currently their efforts in defeating the Orc hordes, Imperial strongholds, and Chaos staging grounds of Imperium Nihilus keep their hunger for battle sated. Infected with the Ferric Blight by the Death Guard Legion of traitor Astartes on the planet of Hollowfall, the Novok dynasty is further harried by the Tyranid Highfleet of Arachne. For even the mightiest of dynasties are susceptible to erosion and extinction, and many observers of the Novok speculate if even their might may one day be extinguished. The lesser dynasties of the Necron Empire, though bereft of much of the glory and power of their betters, are regardless crucial in bolstering their power. Yet many dynasties have befallen to ruin and stagnation, and tales of lost kingdoms forewarn all under the rule of the greater dynasties that should they spurn their pledge of allegiance, they may inherit only ashes. The Adagarth dynasty, during 988.M41 of the human calendar, abandoned their tomb world of Tyr. The inhabitants of the planet had all transformed into flayed ones, and without a sane ruler to corral such forces, it has since been left to its terrible fate. The same fate can be attributed to the Orosk dynasty, as the Flayer virus ravages their numbers due to a deliberate contamination by the Asuryani pathfinders of the craft world of Alatok. The vast fiefdoms of the Charnavok dynasty of the southeast would be devoured by the Tyranid Hive fleet of Behemoth, whilst the Nekfist dynasty are betrayers and turncoats all, and with their resurgence, find no allies within the void of space. The Oruskar dynasty have long been rivals of the Sautek dynasty, and whilst the power of the Stormlord grows exponentially, they warily anticipate the wrath of Imhotep. Though while Oruskar braces for war, the Sekemtar dynasty pledged fealty to the Sautek dynasty during the Wars of Secession, and knows better than to betray the Stormlord. In rare instances, some of the lesser dynasties have thrived, such as the Atun dynasty, who hold dominion of the northern rim of the galaxy, wherein the Necrontyr species of old first burgeoned as a spacefaring civilization. The Ogdobek and their mastery of technical specificity have sheltered well from their millennia of slumber, now revived at peak strength due to their countless hibernation operational redundancies. The Frocht dynasty reside within the Segmentum Pacificus and fashion rad receptors into potent weaponry for their soldiers, which in turn unleash devastation upon their foes. Lastly of note, the Vralek dynasty laid dormant within the human settlement of Hydragast before launching a surprise reclamation of the Agriworld. Aiding the Maynarch dynasty's invasion of the Orphean sector, their alliance with the Greater Dynasty has enabled their pledge as a client dynasty, should they triumph against the Imperium's Orphean Crusade. Hibernating for eons, though there are many examples of Tombworlds succumbing to the ravages of time, the majority emerge untarnished and perform at optimal parameters. Each Tombworld scattered across the length and breadth of the galaxy, our enemies know not where we might strike next and to what scale an emerging Tombworld's forces might burgeon. Activating several rigid algorithmic sequences of escalating threat assessment, awakening protocols, and troop deployments, as befitting their circumstance. Unable to utilize any form of immaterial forces, my people do not require the sorceries of lesser species, for we do not steal power, we craft it. Clean of the fickle gifts of the denizens of the Empyrean, my people utilize null field matrices to combat psychic phenomena with our own technological brilliance. Banishing the creatures of the warp, and even affecting the Tyranid hive fleets within our presence, our extensive armaments and defensive structures, such as the Blackstone pylons, are instrumental in combating the ever-growing threat of chaos. Clad in living metal, our necrodermis bodies protect against small arms fire and repair damage incurred through battle. Should a battle prove to be unwinnable, our forces can retreat en masse in their entirety, using phase technology, preventing our enemies from scavenging nor studying our fallen. For the more mundane mortal vermin of the galaxy, our armies of countless warriors unleash devastation wielding Gauss flayers, which deconstruct our foes at a molecular level. Vaporizing even the most heavily armored primitives, such as your Astartes, Necron warriors are reinforced by immortals wielding Gauss blasters, capable of felling deadlier foe. Other cannon fodder such as the human pariahs exist, though their use has diminished significantly following the humans' Aurelian crusades. Crafted from the human species who inherit the pariah gene flaw, these foot soldiers are an efficient means to harness one's enemies to turn against their former compatriots. Short-lived due to their rarity by dint of the humans purging pariahs within their own civilizations, their scarcity makes them an intriguing yet ineffective use of resources. However, if there is one resource of such enormity all too willing to be fed into the grinding treads of war, it is none other than the Flayed Ones. Of no utility nor use to the Infinite Empire, the nobles of the dynasties gladly allow untold millions of Flayed Ones to attack their foes should they keep a safe distance from their infection. Rarely deployed intentionally, the Flayed Ones appear from unknown pocket dimensions as they scramble towards any opposition who may provide a morsel of their prized flesh. Advancing before the sane and automaton forces of the Infinite Empire, the Flayed Ones have proven a disgustingly efficient means to crush mortal armies, despite the threat of the infection spread. Canoptek wraiths of serpentine design utilize anti-gravitic technologies to glide among the battlefield, silently as they stalk their prey. Armed with close-quarters weaponry, the Canoptek Wraiths advance using phase shifter technology to bypass solid objects and omit piercing the toughest of armaments with their scalpel blades. Destroyers are a most unremitting symbol of our wrath, marching into battle firing Gauss cannons whilst moving at incredible speed, whether using scuttling arachnoid legs or gravitic platforms. Their ferocity, beyond that of the Immortals, the Destroyers are war made manifest, for their forms are twisted to better enhance the carnage they dispense. As war escalates, the more elite reserves are deployed to combat the more stubborn invaders, starting with the Deathmarks. Highly skilled sniper units, capable of striking with unerring precision before phasing in and out of space-time at will. The Deathmarks' proclivity to dispatch high-valued targets, such as enemy commanders, prove them invaluable in thwarting campaigns swiftly. Armed with synaptic disintegrators, the compressed leptonic beams of some atomic particles can pierce even Astartes ceramite and dissolve the tissue beneath its protective layer. Lich Guards are the protectors of the Necron nobility, and as such are equipped with among the finest weapons and armor of the Infinite Empire. Bulky and imposing warriors, the Lich Guard march into battle adorned with the finery reflecting their dynasty, before cleaving their war scythes through enemy lines with deadly effect. Variations such as Lich Guards armed with polearms, dispersion shields and hyperphase swords also exist, capable of carving through Astartes and armored vehicles with little effort. Triarch Praetorians are charged with the preservation of the Infinite Empire, and can be observed only during the most perilous of campaigns. Unlike their contemporaries, the Praetorians never undertook the Great Sleep of the Necrons, and as such have fought clandestine skirmishes across the void for millennia. Hovering above battlefields by use of gravity displacement packs before launching themselves into the forefront of battle, armed with their devastating Rod of the Covenant, their badge of office is among the deadliest armaments of the Necron arsenal. Should heavier support contingents be necessary, Canoptek Spiders stalk the most deadly of war zones, outfitted with dense armor. Deploying smaller Canoptek Scarabs to swarm and overrun enemy positions, their visual sensors allow for instant analysis and exploitation of enemy defensive positions in order to best scour them of mortals. Their fabricator claws allowing for the repair of Tombworld systems, the Spider's particle beamers unravel the most densely protected armaments and vehicles with little expended energy. Canoptek Doomstalkers stride within the armories of their overlord, should any delve too deep into the vaunted stasis tombs of the rulers of the Tombworld. The Doomstalkers unleash their back-mounted Doomsday Blaster and Gauss Flares to deadly effect. Tombstalkers are the mightiest guardians of the Tombworlds, equivalent in scale to a battle titan of the Imperium. Awakened only when the threat to a Tombworld is at its peak, the Tombstalkers burrow from their underground chambers before wreaking havoc upon the mewling primitives above. For such colossal beings are capable of destroying entire armies of mortals should they be let off their leash, and with their regenerative necrodermic shells, any damage sustained is swiftly ignored. The nobility of the Necrons are among the few who retain control of their cognitive faculties and free will. Powerful beyond measure, the mortal demagogues and plebeians of the galaxy can only dream of the might commanded by our patrician rulers. Among the Necron Lords, there are many titles attributed to the rulers of dynasties and Tombworlds, sometimes used solely within the purview of their respective kingdom. The Triarchs, though a bygone title to many, are the most senior of all Necrons, with the Silent King, Sarek, enshrined as the rightful and omnipotent ruler of the Infinite Empire. Below the Triarchs are the Pharaons, each commanding swathes of Tombworlds under their rule, and embarking upon independent quests of reclamation, conquest, and reunification. Overlords rule over smaller Tombworld clusters, yet are beholden to their Pharaons, with some among these ranks attributed the title of Nemesaur as a sign of their rank as the commanding general of a Tomb Cluster's armies. Arch-Cryptex personally advise the Pharaons of their dynasty, as the lesser scientific minds beneath their authority are known simply as Cryptex. Masters of manipulating the arcane, yet scientifically based arts, the Cryptex are invaluable in aiding the effective rule of each dynasty. Those deemed as lords command each individual tomb world, yet are beholden to their overlords, and in some cases, senior cryptex. Destroyer lords were once blood relatives and lords of the Necrontyr aristocracy, yet with their transformation into living metal forms, they have undergone drastic changes in personality. Formerly a Necron lord or higher rank, these tragic symbols are now consumed with the obsession of causing death and destruction wherever they roam. Allowed to remain as members of the Necron nobility, these unfortunate fallen nobles are dispatched to purge the enemies of the Infinite Empire at the head of vast destroyer armies. Each lord, no matter their station, commands Necron fleets of varying sizes, capable of traversing the stars without the aid of the Immaterium. Propelling our crafts by eschewing their inertial constraints within the material universe, our fleets are capable of instantaneous travel. Outfitted with sophisticated weaponry beyond the comprehension of mortals such as the humans, their crude artillery, still propelled with gas and chemicals of all things, has proven vastly inferior. Our craft capable of outmaneuvering all, with exception to the frail yet strangely elegant Drukhari Voidcraft, the Imperium of Man has yet to face a true test of our naval forces. Our species embodies the virtue of patience, and like all beings of flesh and blood, time is a virtue they can ill afford. For whilst our enemies decay and commit atrocities among themselves, we bide our time, waiting for the opportune time to strike.
When the end comes, it will not be at the hand of any mortal being of this or any other realm. Death will come at the hands of the ancients, those who determined our fate eons before we stood erect upon the holy ground of Terra, and gazed up into the starry night.
This has been a tale of the Infinite Empire, read by the Omniscient. Your extinction is inevitable, mortal vermin, and no amount of your vaunted angels can save you. The death rattle of your species is the inevitable conclusion of such crude vessels of flesh and blood. But take heart, for those of you who give your meaningless lives to the Necrons may earn yourselves salvation. And there is no shortage of tasks to accomplish in the name of the dynasties, and free of such distractions, such as choice, you will serve your betters well.